The world we live in faces large challenges that are existential for humanity, in need of solutions. In order to develop these solutions, we need radical interdependence, entrepreneurship, leadership, and passion. Bringing leaders together in an action-oriented community is essential. B for Good Leaders is building a global cooperative community in which entrepreneurship works together. Every month, we design a leadership dialogue in which you can learn and interact with influential leaders. Welcome to this month's edition of the B for Good Dialogue.
Good afternoon and welcome to the fourth Leaders Dialogue. My name is Francine Lemos. I'm a board member of B-Lab Global and also part of B for Good Leaders team. And I'm here today with Lynn Zevenberger, co-founder of B for Good Leaders, and we host our event from the fabulous studio of IT Global in Eindhoven. In the upcoming hour and a half, we will have the opportunity to discuss, explore, and learn the theme, the power of value-aligned finance. As the world faces increasing environmental and social challenges, we believe that finance can and should be a tool for change. Of course, if it's guided by a sense of purpose and values. This topic is also one of the main tracks of our upcoming summit in 11 and 12 of May in Amsterdam, and I hope to see you all there. And we are trying to connect everything. We are delighted to introduce you to our 5 amazing guests. Marilu van Goldstein, Impact Investor Advisor, Emmanuel Faber, Chair of International Sustainability Standards Board, ISSB, Wayne Hennessy Barrett, CEO of 4G Capital, João Paulo Pacífico, CEO of Grupo Gaia, and Brendan Keon, one of our stewards from Barefoot Capital. And we are also delighted to have you all here with us, and thank you for spending this afternoon at this 4th Dialogue series.
The world is rapidly changing as we see it, and many industries require a fundamentally different approach, and we call that systemic change. And systemic change is difficult, so it requires courageous leaders. And we believe that entrepreneurs are the key change makers who can unite their forces, their creativity, their people, their capital to change the world and to build a flourishing world. The goal for the B for Good Leaders dialogue is to bring these leaders together and to talk about the core challenges. We're building a close-knit group of truly committed business leaders to collectively shift markets, paradigms and behaviors for a new economy. And therefore we create this space for dialogues between the leaders and some of the great thinkers every month.
Yes, and now we are starting the first theme of today's session. We are now discussing how can we invest in companies that we can trust. Is it possible? Sustainability factors are becoming mainstream part of investment decision making. There are increasing calls for companies to provide high quality and globally compared information on sustainability-related risks and opportunities. There is also a strong desire to address a fragmented landscape of voluntary sustainability-related standards and requirements that add costs, complexity, and risk to both companies and investors. Let's take a look on a short video that will introduce us to this theme.
The relationship between the environment and finance, these issues are not going to go away. People are going to care more about how their own investments are affecting the environment. It has to be long-term, it has to be enduring, it also critically has to be global to ensure that financial decision-making integrates climate change, integrates the environment. That's really important if we're going to change the world.
More recently, the impact of our day-to-day lives on the environment has been the center of attention, and that is affecting how investors allocate their money.
The circumstances, the context where we are living in with climate change so clearly around us needs also an answer from the financial sector. The principles provide a clear framework addressing social issues, environmental issues, and making it clear for banks where they can create impact and where not.
The rapid rise of green finance has been one of the defining trends of the past few years. There are now more than 600 ETFs that claim to follow ESG principles, but questions remain as to how many really promote sustainability. And with murky definitions, wildly differing strategies, and no global benchmark, it's well worth asking just how green is green finance?
It's like corruption. Catching corruption is difficult. How do you know who is corrupt? And that's why having insiders on some of this, just like what you saw at Deutsche Bank, there was a whistleblower who came out and said, look, the company was exaggerating their positions in green and they were doing greenwashing.
Accountability and transparency are key to the principles.
And I'd say the main challenge is that everybody recognizes that capital markets today do not count everything that counts. And one way or the other, there is an understanding that sustainability issues may be material to investors' decisions on how they allocate capital.
Right now, the measurement of ESG is fraudulent because every player in the market wants to create an index that they want to say, this is our ESG measure. And so it's kind of a loop that is self-fulfilling. And we need better measurement, we need better detection, and we need better monitoring.
So what the IFRS Foundation has learned from a consultation to its stakeholders is that it could play a role in trying to bring everyone with a unit set of global baseline and building blocks on the themes of environment and social and governance topics in the near future.
So, to introduce us this topic, I would like to bring a great leader that is with us today, Emmanuel Faber, Chair of International Sustainability Standards Board, and he will be interviewed by Marcello Palazzi, our co-founder. So welcome, Marcello, welcome, Emmanuel. Great to have you with us.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. And Emmanuel, pleasure to see you. So I'll make a very quick intro. I say, because Emmanuel, many of you know, has been CFO, CEO, lately Danone. And that is how I met him when he started the journey of certifying Danone as a B Corp globally. And in the last year and a half, he's been chairing the ISSB. He will talk about that. For me, Emmanuel, you are like 4 people in one. You are a visionary, you are a thinker, you are an activist, and you are an executive. So if I may sort of praise you as being 4 people in one, it is very difficult to find people who can be operational. You were a CFO at Danone for a number of years, so obviously you know the nitty-gritty of running a company. You've written books, you've expressed your thoughts, you're a leader and an activist in many of your other activities. So it's a real pleasure. I won't go further than that and say, thanks for coming. My question is, in your role as chair of ISSB, what are you doing in shifting finance towards being more values aligned? Simple but deep question. Thank you, Emmanuel.
Yeah, thank you, Marcello. I hope everyone can hear me well. Can you? That's good. Okay, great. Well, great to see you, everyone. I must say you're an incredibly inspiring tribe. Remember conversations in Rome and in other places earlier. The fact that the B4 Good Leaders group and tribe exists is fundamental, because we need that collective to get the energy going, to get the inspiration, to get the courage to do things, because I guess some of you guys, and from time to time I also feel a bit alone. And so let me say briefly, I think the idea that finance is a system that cannot be changed and that is disconnected from the rest is is one that is a mental construct. It's very clear that the fundamental reason finance exists is to support the economy that is here to support people that are here to respect the planet. Otherwise, things just stop. So I don't know if that is values or purpose or whatever you want to call it, but it's quite clear that finance is blind, as I was quoted to say. We count a lot of things, but we do not count everything that counts. I actually believe that today capital markets are the indispensable ally of public policies, because they are the natural, and I would even say the only connector of all economies altogether globally at a moment where multilateralism is suddenly in a very good shape. So what we're doing, Marcello, with the International Sustainable Standard Board is we are working on the tragedy of horizons that McCartney mentioned a few years ago. Not only the fact that we do not look at the long term, but we don't even look at the very near term in the space outside of the factory, what's happening in the value chains. We do not account for things that are there. We do not account for the erosion of soil. We do not account for emissions and combustion when we are an oil company, etc. So what we do is opening that space and that time for creating a new accounting language that will be integrated with the current accounting system, and that in which there will be a unique, verifiable, comparable economic language that investors, bankers, companies can be sharing when they will want to get support for that transition. What is the cost of capital given that particular language that's bringing that clarity and transparency on those risks, impacts, opportunities that I didn't see because my accounting system doesn't allow me to look further down the road or across the side of the road on which I am. Very concretely, I think it's about embarking the fact that we need to come from a situation where it's all about efficiency. My short-term accounting earnings, this quarter, next quarter, to resiliency. There will not be that sustainable model that I was describing and relationship between finance, economy, planet, and people if there is not the notion that resilience is absolutely fundamental. And to this, I was again moved by what I heard in the very early introduction of that discussion: radical interdependence, you said, and regenerative. And what I just want to share is that we inserted in this very foundational grammar of our standards in December, and I will come to timing for 1 minute, but we inserted those notions at the very core of this in doing two things. One, we embarked the integrated reporting framework into the standards of the International Sustainability Accounting for Tomorrow. That says at the very top of our foundational standard that the value that a company creates for itself and for its shareholders is inextricably linked to the stakeholders which it serves, the civil society in which it operates, and the natural capital that it mobilizes. And it goes on saying that this is the same value in this business ecosystem. And if you draw too much value from the financial standpoint, it means you have a leakage of value in one of these other capitals. So we go saying that you can only create value over time, and therefore in a sustainable manner, if as a company, you pay attention on how to protect, develop, and regenerate all of these capitals: human capital, social capital, natural capital, etc., which is really, for me, the nexus between the radical interdependence that you guys are celebrating and living, but also the regenerative nature of economy that we need to bring back, because we are in an economy which is not regenerative at all, finance which is not regenerative at all. So I'll stop here on the substance, because I think there are absolutely huge ramifications from the fact that this has been inserted at the really at the foundation of our standards. And in terms of timing, that initial standard and our first standard, which is then about climate, are going to be finalized in 3 months from now. I remember meeting in Rome and saying that may come, pretty soon. We are there. They will be ready for early adoption as soon as probably July this year. Effective date for countries' adoption will start in 2024. So that's literally tomorrow, and we are already working now on the next generation of pixels that we will bring to climate, which is about biodiversity, deforestation, water, and just transition, because for me it's very clear from day one, there will not be a climate transition if there is not social justice at the same time. So maybe I'll stop here. Thank you for having me, and continue the discussion, Marcello.
So, Manuel, thank you very much. So the floor is open. Please pose your questions, and I'll, of course, pick one or two questions in order to allow Manuel to spend another few minutes with us. I have a quick question, if I may, since I'm waiting. You and I briefly discussed it by email. Interdependence, for me, would also mean that, say, a company like your old company, Danone, would report not only their own accounts like Danone itself, but actually extended accounts that they would include society, the city, the other stakeholders, because interdependence has to be also measured. So how far are we, or are we on this journey to eventually one day have integrated accounts that also show, in a way, to show the social capital you talk about? So what are the positive and negative that a company is doing to its city, to its province or state? So how do we enlarge this set of responsibility and measure it?
Yeah, so there are many things in your questions, and of course, there are very important ones. From where we are, what we are saying in the same standards and in the guidance of using that standard is that we therefore encourage companies to measure their impact on each of these capitals, on the soil degradation of the water catchment areas and the circular economy of the materials, to measure that impact in order to be able to inform their shareholders about whether there is a value creation there or a value leakage in that particular. In the case of Danone, as you know, we published an IFRS earning per share adjusted with the cost of the total emissions, including scope 3. 90% of Danone's emissions were in the field. Because of not enough regenerative agriculture, on the contrary, intensive agriculture, and therefore we invested to make sure that the carbon would be sunk back into the soil. So by illustrating this value, you're actually capturing the ability to explain to your investors, bankers, and others how you manage the various capitals and the way the value is circulating. It is not the second stage. You're describing the second stage, which is about how do you actually report on this. And that is what is integrated reporting, which we see as our horizon. But there is no mandatory stepways to this horizon for the time being. And I'm not sure whether there will be at some point in time. But that is an encouragement that we are pushing companies to use. And the other thing is that I think you're touching to a point, which is the governance of companies, which is not in my remit right now. As you know, we've been on the B Corp journey. Danone was an entreprise à mission, a mission and purpose-driven company at the governance level. I personally believe that it has many ramifications in the ability for the company to create value for a much broader stakeholders group, but that is not in my current job.
Emmanuel,
okay,
there are some questions from the audience now. Let's coordinate that a little bit. And the first question that we see here is from Wayne Hennessy Barrett. So maybe, Wayne, you can pose the question directly yourself instead of us reading it to Emmanuel.
Thank you, Lane. Just a very sincere thanks to Emmanuel for that superb synopsis of where we need to be going. Disturbing comment by some large voices in the markets expressing skepticism about ESG and seeing that they want to move away from the movement, if you like, because they feel they're leaving money on the table. We believe the exact opposite. But are we seeing value being recognized now by sustainable practice in valuations, in exits and investments? Is it now paying to be good?
Thanks, Wayne. It's a very important question. I put it this way. I think we're really in transition. I will feel that I can say yes to your question the day that instead of only doing profit warnings, companies are actually doing climate warnings. And the day they do that, their stock price goes down. I think the language that we are developing right now is meant exactly to create that situation, but it will take probably another couple of years before the standards are being used in a manner that is well established enough so that it actually drives market pricing. Now, to your point about sustainability, there are countries where those topics are becoming political topics. And I think we need to realize that in certain countries, sustainability will be used as a political agenda. Europe is using that as a political agenda. They've got a policy about this. Other countries like, the US has a different way of approaching this. But yet what I can say is that there's a general recognition now that even for the market to perform, to function properly, they need that information on sustainability. I'll just give you one example and then I stop. Beyond the equity markets, the biggest market in the world are the debt markets. Well, on the debt markets, the banking supervision, the Financial Stability Board of the G20, which is connected to the Basel Committee, has embarked climate as their systemic risks portfolio that they need to manage. And they've been requesting our standards because they want the granularity in the lending portfolio, the portfolio of loans of banks, to understand the decarbonation of the loans. So there will be coming a day where, as a bank, if you have got too much carbon in your loan portfolio, you will be penalized by your central bank or by the Basel Committee because you will need to use more equity because you've got more risks attached to that carbon thing. So this is really the market mechanisms which I think are here at work. We can see how those mechanisms start to work, but of course, there is, the standards are not even yet there. So we really need, as I just said, a couple of years before we see that, I think, happening really.
Yeah, great,
Thank you so much.
Emmanuel. Thank you, Wayne. And we have another question from Elsie Mayo. Elsie, maybe you can post your question.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thank you for this wonderful forum. Emmanuel, if I heard you correctly, you said that any success with climate, regenerating climate, would depend upon social justice.
Yeah.
We have a client who's actually has that point of view and is looking to influence her financial sector in her country. How would you explain that in a way that international business in the insurance sector, for example, could appreciate it?
Yeah, thanks, Elsie, for the question. Well, two things. The first is very practically, when Volkswagen announces that ahead of the EU regulation, there will be entire electrical vehicles in 2030. Now they're reconsidering, but anyway, by 35 anyway. They are saying we have 100,000 jobs that need to be reskilled in our workforce. And by the way, we have 300,000 jobs in the supply chains because it takes much less people to build an electrical engine than a thermal engine. There is no way that governments will allow Volkswagen and their supply chain to put 400,000 people in Europe out of a job. So the immediate question of feasibility of the transition is, what is Volkswagen doing to restructure and reskill in a responsible manner that enables them to do this? Otherwise, they will be stopped. The second question is, if you have a factory, that factory is in a place where there will not be water in 10 years from now. So you have to divert that factory. If you just walk away and do not take into account the way you are going to deal with the communities locally, you may have government actions locally that will take action against you doing this, and you will be paying either taxes or you will be sued by those entities. What do? We have ample discussions with First Nations in Canada and elsewhere about the fact that dealing with First Nations has allowed a number of companies to do actually business properly in the regions where they are, because they have this relationship with the ecosystem. And that's part of the just transition as well. So I think there is really a business case that needs to be explained, that transition will only happen if it is socially acceptable. The other thing I'd say very briefly is I was speaking with the chair of the first working group of the IPCC yesterday. They just issued a report. It's really interesting that now IPCC not only deals with climate science, they deal with the social science of climate. They've got anthropologists, they've got sociologists now, political scientists that are working on exactly that notion of just transition on which we are starting to build. Because I'm interested in having IPCC science that I can base my standard setting work on, as much as we do the same on climate on their science. So it's also to say that there is a building a momentum, including in the IPCC report, the latest report now, about the fact that this science on the social transition, what they call equity and just an equitable transition and just transition, is there. I would invite you to just look at this, because it's an indication that there is more and more a consensus about that indeed social justice is needed if we want to be able to enable the climate transition.
Thank you. That's very helpful and encouraging.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both. We have two more questions and not much time to go. So I'll ask Viviana and Herman Mulder to post their question. Let's start with Viviana. And Emmanuel, I will kindly ask you to be brief.
I'll try.
So we can. Thank you.
Hi, this is Viviana, and thank you. And actually, my question links to Herman, so it works beautifully. Emmanuel, I was just wondering, there is a danger of fragmentation of standards. And then there is the question of who will adopt which standards, how long will it take? And I suppose if we want to be action-oriented, what can we all do to accelerate adoption of the quote-unquote best, right, most accessible, most acceptable, most shared standards?
Yeah, thank you, Viviana. Well, I hope that we are going to be this one. That's why we were created. We consolidated already 4 important standards to create that unique language. Just to give you perspective on adoption, there is not only, as you said, the regulatory adoption, and that will take time. Countries will go one after one. Japan has started, Korea started, Singapore started, UK started. Europe has been there. We are now building the interoperability with their standards in climate in particular. So yeah, it will take time. On the other side, we have the opportunity to also have direct market usage. So, coalitions of companies, your companies can adopt them on the 1st of July. They'll be there. If you want them, take them, use them. Investors and banks can use them. Some have said they would be early adopters. I would accept that. I would expect that to happen as well. So it's really going to be, I think, a market and a regulatory adoption. And just a last thing on this, we've got an agreement now with CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, that the climate data that will be reported on their platform next year, or on 25 for the 2024 cycle of reporting, will be formatted against our climate standards. So that's 20,000 companies in the world that will report on CDP with our standards. So you can see that coalitions and platforms can help a quick adoption, because I agree, we don't have so much time.
Thank you, Marcello and Emmanuel, for your discussion and your questions. And we could go on, I feel, for maybe another hour, because we have many questions coming in. But unfortunately, we also have some other, or not unfortunately, fortunately, we also have some other guests. And so I would like to thank you. We will make sure that the questions come to you, Marcello and Emmanuel, and we will answer them to the people who ask the questions. So thank you very much. And I would like to introduce all of you to our next guest and speaker, and that is Marilou, not van Golstein, but van Golstein Brouwers. Her name is a little bit longer. We have known each other for a long time, for more than 40 years, I think. A good friend and a great leader. An impact investing advisor, as it says. Marilou brings the concept of values-aligned finance, which is about investing in companies that are aligned with values and principles that are committed to making a positive impact on society and the environment. So I would like to welcome you, Marilou, to this program, to this dialogue. And immediately start with a question, because I mentioned value-aligned finance. And how does that differ from other approaches in sustainable investing?
Yeah, hi Lane, and very nice to be here. And I think the starting point is different. In values-aligned finance, it starts with humans. What do we as humans value? What are we passionate about? What is the purpose of our lives? And how do we align our money, our investments with our values? And if we want a fair and equitable world, how do we align our investments with that? And if we are passionate about regenerative farming or restoration of ecosystems, how do we invest in a way that achieves that? And it's really about a shift in consciousness and a realization that money can indeed be a driving force of the change in the world that we want to see. And this is from the perspective of investors. But I believe that also from the perspective of businesses, it's important to know what the values are behind the money that is invested in your company, either in the form of debt, but specifically in the form of capital. So I would say it's important for businesses to know if this type of money is really looking for short-term financial results, or if the values behind that money are really aligned with what you as an entrepreneur try to achieve. So I think that's also an important part of this values-aligned finance. And then I would say there's a third aspect, and that's really about finding ways to invest in what we actually truly value. And I find there's often a gap between what we truly value and what our current financial markets allow us to invest in. And for example, we, I think, increasingly realize that the real basis of our wealth are actually healthy ecosystems and nature. Nature is really at the basis of our wealth and of our economies. But it's still very hard to actually invest in nature and to invest in restoring ecosystems. So I think it's also about this aspect of finance, like how do we create ways, either to make nature investable, or how, in general, to align finance with what we truly value. So maybe let me stop there.
No, that immediately also, I think, Marilou makes it a little bit, or shows the difficulty, what we truly think is valuable. And so how would you engage with companies and other stakeholders to promote this kind of finance, values aligned? What strategies have you found to be effective in driving this change?
Yeah, let me first say that I strongly believe that the path to sustainability really requires inner and outer change. And the outer change is the work that, for example, also Emmanuel just talked about. How can we make markets work so that the negative externalities are taken into account? How do we change our accounting standards to, let's say, really show what the true value is, and make it in a way that it actually changes corporate behavior? So all these things are important. So also let's say, what's coming to us through Brussels, the CSRD and all this new legislation. That's all important, but it's not enough. I think real change happens when also the heart is involved, and this requires inner work. And so, if you ask me, like, what kind of strategies are working or necessary, then I believe it's a mix of strategies. And I think one type of strategy, if you can call it that, is the work that's being done in trusted investor circles like PIM, like Tonic, and like the work that I'm myself involved in with the Wire Group, working with circles of women who are investing their wealth. So that's the type of work that's needed. But then also, I would say, let's say the work that is leading on changing investor behavior. And for example, it's very important to look at investing in such a way that we really make it possible to invest in system change. I mean, you were starting this off, Lane, with talking about the need in system change that we have, and the question then is, like, how do we really invest in system change? So there is, for example, the work of Professor Johan Schot from the Netherlands, and what's her name, Roberta Benedetti del Rio from Generation Management on transformative investment. So that's, I find, very interesting. And then there's, for example, also the work of Mariana Bosesano. She's a member of the Club of Rome. Some of you will know her, on what she calls integral investing. So it's also this type of change that's needed to really create this values-aligned investments for the future.
Thank you,
So let me
thank you,
stop there.
Marilu. It is, before I give you the word to Francine, she had a question. I would also like to tell all the audience that, again, you can please jump into the discussion for as much time as we have to bring your questions to Marilu.
Yeah, sure.
Francine.
And Marilu, how do you see, I was wondering, the role of technology evolving the field of sustainable finance? And what opportunities and risks do you see on that field?
Yeah, that's actually a very big question, because technology is developing so incredibly fast. So it's even hard to conceive how disruptive it will be. If you only look at what happened in the past few months with ChatGPT and how that's going to influence all our lives. But let me say that I see some really positive examples of technology and one is that technology really helps to create a direct link between values-aligned investors and companies. I mean, that's something which is so much easier through technology these days, and it's an important development. But there's also, let's say, another way that technology is currently being developed and helping to what I just mentioned in how can we invest in nature. So there is, for example, the work of the land banking group, and they're using technology to value nature improvement and preservation. And another example is the work of an Australian group called Love to be Bright Green. And they are building a model where they aim to reward the work of regenerative farmers. So regenerative farmers, they obviously grow products that they can sell, but they're also creating value by creating healthy soils, creating better water quality, better air quality. And this value is currently not so much rewarded. So can you use technology? Can you, for example, use the technology behind cryptocurrencies, blockchain? Can you use the blockchain technology and develop what they call semi-fungible tokens that are really backed by this actual natural value that's being created? So it's all quite new. They're developing this, and this will soon be something where you can actually invest in nature through this new technology.
Very interesting.
That's just two examples.
Yeah, I believe that João Pacífico will bring a very nice example from Brazil later on as well. And I see here that Herman Mulder has a question. Herman, do you want to pose your question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Marlo. Great introduction. It addresses a lot of deep issues. I have a specific question for you and for all of us. How can we scale your ideas? And let me give you, to lead you into an answer from your side, aren't the pension funds having a very special statutory responsibility for future generations? In other words, how can we crowd in the pension funds to scale the ideas which you have been developing?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's let's say it's also not an easy question because let's say specifically, well, the institutional investors, pension funds, one of them. On the one hand, they have really this long-term perspective, and they have I would say the obligation. You're saying it also to create value for future generations. And at the same time, they're also stuck in this system that is still valuing short-term results much more above long-term results. So I believe, but also there, it's I would say the change is already happening through, well, also human beings working there, and increasingly, and this is also something which is coming to top management sometimes from the younger generation, that they actually also want to see this change in investment behavior. And what I see is that there's increasingly also the willingness for pension funds to say, like, specifically because we are having huge volumes that we invest, why should we not take maybe 5% of that volume and use it in a much more experimental way, so that, let's say, this new type of development that still needs, I would say, more risk, money that can take a bit more risk, but ultimately has huge public benefits. So they are specifically the ones who could do that, because they are working with large portfolios. So it's this type of thinking, and this is also what comes back in this work that I just mentioned with Johan Schot, the transformative investment, the investing in deep transitions. So it's I'm hopeful that this will lead to a change on that. Also in those.
Thank you, Marilu. Thank you, Marilu. It was also a question from Herman to all of us to think about, and I know Herman didn't say that for nothing. So he sees that is something that we all have to push on forward, I think, and I agree completely. So I would like to thank you, Marilu, for sharing your experience. This is always too short, of course, because we have a question from Suzanne Wisse, but we will make sure that question gets to you. But thank you for now, Marilu.
Yeah,
thanks.
Thank you so much. And let's move on the second part, and I believe one of the best, because now we will have time to interact, and you will have the opportunity to talk to each other. But before that, does finance can really make a difference? Let's take a look on a short video, and then we will bring Daniel to prepare the breakout rooms.
We are starting with getting the affordable finances for women drivers by giving credit rating options for everyone. And for the financial institution, they now know where the money is going.
You can see that she really cares about the women entrepreneurs that we bring onto our program and to test and pilot our technology. She really cares about them.
We introduced a mechanism of reaching out to people through mobile banking. Through access through this mobile platform, they should be able to be included in the financial space.
I'm from Ghana. My business is in the IT sector.
And I'm a fashion designer from Nigeria.
And what we do, we replace candles and kerosene by making solar lights affordable for the people who are living in Madagascar.
The
founder of Brits Fresh Foods, which is a company that aims to promote healthy lifestyle in Africa.
I'm from Zambia, Lusaka, and I'm in the health sector.
I'm developing a solution which can help farmers manage their farms as a business.
Access to finance is very important in Nicaragua because people, especially, let's say, poor people or entrepreneurs or micro-entrepreneurs, don't have access to bank. We have many products, but the product that we are proud of is home improvement. For micro-entrepreneurs, home is not only just to live, but it's also the place where they do the working and the business.
Kenya's capital, Nairobi, is also home to the largest slums on the continent. Into this deprived and hostile environment came an organization called Jamii Bora. It was started by an extraordinary woman determined to bring microfinance to the poorest and most disadvantaged people in Kenya.
So we started a small green grocery business, and in 6 months I had paid back the money and went back to Jamii Bora and borrowed the second loan.
We want the sustainability for our client, either in business, also in their health. And for that, we would like to keep it going where everyone can have the access of sanitation. Then we designed this product where we combine the sanitation loan with the business.
Indeed, I was maybe I shouldn't have been surprised by what Emmanuel Faber said only. I feel a little bit lonely sometimes. And I hope you do not feel lonely. You're surrounded by 60 other amazing leaders. And I guess curiosity, who are these leaders? Who are these people? What are they thinking? What are their ideas on this concept of finance? And we have 2 questions for you that you can enjoy discussing together to get to know each other a little bit and to get the views on this financial item. And I think now we're going to see them projected on the screens. And these 2 questions are, the first one, what fundamentals would you think should be included in this values-aligned finance that was introduced? And the second question is, can finance transform the world? How? We saw a couple of examples in this video. Do you have personal examples of making this happen or seeing this happen? How can finance transform the world? So these are the 2 questions for you. We've created a number of breakout rooms, groups of 3, which makes it easier for you to actually get to know each other. And we create them now, and in 15 minutes we come back and hear from you.
We are now following with the second part of this dialogue series. The question is, how can finance really make a difference? And we have the privilege to spend some time with leaders that are using the power of finance to generate a difference in people's life and also that of the planet. I would like to introduce to you Wayne Hennessy Barrett, who is the CEO of 4G Capital. Wayne is also a steward of Be4Good Leaders, and he will share what he's doing in Africa. And we have João Paulo Pacifico. What a beautiful name. He is the CEO of Grupo Gaia in Brazil. So welcome, Wayne and João Paulo. And to immediately jump into questions to you, but before I do that, I remind all of you that you can still ask questions on the chat, and we will try to bring them to the 2 big leaders. João Paulo, I heard you call yourself an activist CEO. Could you share the experience you built in Brazil in order to democratize investments and support local communities? So what was the part of your job to become an activist CEO? João Paulo.
First of all, I'm going to contextualize what we have here in Brazil in the debt capital markets. The debt capital markets in Brazil is highly concentrated, both in terms of investors and the ones that receive the money. So we started to provide money to local communities with a focus on housing and agriculture, but in the beginning, just for big investors, because if you see, the capital markets is for big investors and big companies to receive the money. And we were trying to make it in a different way, to have small investors investing in local communities, business that's going to pay back. So it was a very huge challenge that we had. So we started to finance the refurbish of houses in favelas in São Paulo, which was the first blended finance in Brazil. It was very interesting, and the newspaper said it's the first debenture of good in Brazil. It was very, very well noticed at that time. But then we started to do other deals, but just for big investors. And then in 2019, we started to talk with MST. MFT stands for the Homeless Movement in Brazil. It's one of the biggest social movements in the world. They are composed of more than 1 million persons that doesn't have land, and they produce food in the country. They are the biggest organic rice producers in Latin America. But as you see, the capital markets doesn't like those guys. And even the agribusiness doesn't like those guys. So it was very, very tough for us, but we were able to make a deal to finance 7 cooperatives of those guys. And we could attract more than 5,000 investors to this deal, small investors. The people could invest more. The minimum amount to invest was $20 in reais, 100 reais. And then it was very challenging. And those 5,000 investors that were willing to invest, 1.5 invested, and the book building was done. More than 3,000 investors were enabled to invest, which was incredible. And then Faria Lima, which is our Brazilian Wall Street, was a kind of against this deal. It was wonderful for the small producers that they didn't have credit.
And maybe João Paulo, you allow me to link this to the experiences of Wayne. Wayne has been working for many years now in Africa. And maybe Wayne, when you listen to João Paulo, can you bring some examples of micro-lending, as I would call it, what João Paulo is doing in Brazil, to Africa? How do you see that?
Well, first of all, I'd like to commend my brother, João Paulo, on the amazing job he's done, and also framing himself as an activist, because we all have to tell our story. We are breaking traditional pattern recognition in what we're doing. And we know, and we're living the fact that the sustainable regenerative economy is the future, and we have to change minds and mindsets constructively. So that small message to begin. I've got really three points to make. And the first is the transformative power of financial inclusion, of giving people who have traditionally not had many advantages a leg up, not even a leg up, investing in really resilient, really capable, really good enterprises who know how to run businesses, who are more resilient than you can possibly describe. And we provide microloans, $50 to $1,000, to self-employed, mainly female, informal enterprises who are lining the streets. They're densely populated in the slums of Kibera that you saw on the video in the break. And these are the future of our planet. You know, in a short time, by 2050, 1 in 3 working adults is going to be African. 1 in 4 human beings will be on the continent of Africa. So we see through small loans and business training, our customers grow their revenues by 82% every year. We see them increase their business by 60%. We see 90% repeat business as they use our credit to grow. So these are the best customers in the world. This is the growing and expanding market opportunity. And it is our job to let the developed markets know that this is the place they need to be in. And we have the ability to deliver goods and services on terms that work for the customers. So I'll just pause there.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm really interested, the people who knows me and knows that I like activism quite a lot. And I would be very interested to say, is activism possible into finance? And João Paulo, you mentioned that you need to shift the mindset of the Faria Limers. Is that possible, or should we turn around and do something else? I would like to listen both of you in that regard.
Wayne, do you want to start?
Sure. So I see being an activist as taking an active leading partner discussion. And if you genuinely want to change the world, you've got to bring people with you. So rather than try to tear anything down, I want to change the direction of where we're going. And I can do that by telling my customer story. So I'll tell you right here and right now that I dropped my life savings 10 years ago into giving unsecured lending and loans, to people with no data, with no bank accounts, with the most difficult personal journeys. But I was blessed with experience. I could tell where they were coming from. I could tell that they were good for it. I looked and saw their businesses. And my customers repay me between 95 and 97% on time. Okay. And then they tell their friends, they grow their businesses, they employ more people. So you can't tell me that I'm doing some crazy risky thing, but I can tell you that I will deliver market-beating yields to any investor, be they debt or equity, and we will change lives. And through the power of technology, we can scale this using mobile money, using mobile devices. Smartphone penetration is now 70% of the market. So telling that story effectively and securing great investors, as we have been blessed with, like Rock, LGT, amazing impact private equity fund. They supported us a year ago today, transformative effect. We can put this across emerging markets globally, and we can work with other brother and sister partner organizations. This is the kind of activism I'm talking about. I don't want to break anything. I want to build value, and I want to provide the ability for global capital pools to go to where people need it most, and that we can start thinking as a species and growing and succeeding together.
Amazing. What about you, João?
I believe that we need to have activists in the financial market, because the current guys are putting ourselves in a very bad shape. As you can see, I'm talking about Brazil. Brazil, as I told you, have the Faria Lima, which is the equivalent to Wall Street. And the guys from Faria Lima, they are completely disconnected from the reality. And it's very bad. If you see, most of them has voted in the worst president that we have had in the history of Brazil. So it's crazy. And then also contributing to what Wayne said, we have a very incredible experience with a small farmer. I have a deal that we did to small producers of cocoa in the south of Bahia. Their delinquency is nothing. They pay everything on time. And in 1 year of operation of that, their income increased 40%. Look at this, 40% their income increased in 1 year. We provided that and technical assistance for them. So, and they didn't have access to credit. So in Brazil, if you see, the big companies, they need credit. And also the small producers, the small guys also need credit. And we have another thing that is incredible. It's incredible bad in Brazil, which is the interest rates. The interest rates for the poor people, it's hundreds percent. It's crazy. It can be 1,000% a year. 1,000. Yeah, it's true. So who is able to pay it? So what drives the Brazilian capital market is the greedy. There are many greedy people. So this is why I believe that we need activists in the financial market.
And when I listen to you, João, and to you, Wayne, I'm almost beginning to think who are the early adopters of what you want, who help you, because what Wayne said, you put your own money in it in the beginning, and you basically didn't take a big risk. So how are you being supported by financials and financial people, financial institutions, both in Brazil and in Africa? When I hear you say about 1,000%, Joao, I think where could you ever find money? But so how is that? How can you find supporters?
I guess, I struggled to raise capital for the first, year and a half. I had to learn to tell my story. And I had to learn to describe what we're doing in a way that could be recognized. And so we began with, small venture capital, high net worth individuals, friends and family, the traditional entrepreneur agony journey. You don't pay yourself for the first year, all that stuff. And then, money follows money. So our first investors saw the value. They knew fintech, they knew Africa, and then we're able to start raising venture debt. Now, not cheap, but a heck of a lot cheaper than the numbers that Joao was describing. And so we were able to manage that, and we were able to act as a filter to bring down prices for our customers compared to their other alternatives. And that's how we compete, by being better value than the alternatives. And we were very lucky. We got a couple of things right, probably by accident, but we were able to partner with some local banks. And at the height of COVID, which was a really difficult time, I'm reluctant to even invoke the word, but it was a really horrible time. And God bless them, we had $3 million of debt financing from Citibank. And that was completely guaranteed by the US government, by the DFC. And they took that risk on us at a time when the world needed it most, when our markets needed it most, where people needed to trade through to survive. And so I guess to answer your question, Lane, we work with banks, we work with institutions, we are having very productive discussions with DFIs, and we want to eventually grow to be able to engage with pension funds and mutual funds, and then return to the equity markets when we need that kind of growth capital again, because this allows us to bring prices down for customers. It still allows us to give our investors a great yield. So I guess that combination of entrepreneurial passion, of being really, really mission focused, but also just be highly professional. And we are building a neobank. We are building the next generation of financial institution that blends profit and purpose, that is now financing green enterprises. We're providing financing for electrical vehicles, for off-grid solar, for alternative biofuels to get people off kerosene and off ethanol and off charcoal and what have you. And I'm inspired by Joao and everybody else on this call, by learning to tell your story, by engaging with the people who want returns and showing that you can be a better business by doing right by your customer and your staff and staying really disciplined. I think that's how we get this change, and by measuring it and benchmarking it. And that's the power of B Corp.
Yeah, just before we pass it to João to answer, I see that Marcelo has an interesting comment. Marcelo, do you want to bring that up?
Well, I want to say I've been involved in microfinance for many years with Mohammed Yunus in the early 2000s. This morning I had a meeting with the chairman of Yunus Social Business here in Amsterdam. And I've seen that actually when we had to talk about risk, return, and impact. And now, with the demise of Credit Suisse and Silicon Valley Bank and so forth, you ask the question, well, basically, if you invest in microfinance, or if you scale, which is Herman Mulder asked the same question, if we can scale this microloans and loans to small businesses in many of these countries that need it, actually the risk is not so high. And you can make a moderate return. You're not going to lose your money like you do in Credit Suisse. So we should rethink this whole risk-return impact, because we need trillions, as we know from the SDGs. We need trillions to be invested in social businesses, more businesses, family businesses, more family business. So there's a lot to do. And I was very encouraged in the discussion with Yunus Social Business that their next step is to actually connect large corporates with the social entrepreneurs, and basically create supply chains where there is a win-win. So there's a lot to do, and we will actually have a whole session at the Amsterdam Summit in May, so we can go deeper into that discussion. Thank you.
Great. João?
Yeah, good comment. We have a huge experience with big farmers and with very small farmers. Guess what of these two types has the better payment history? It's incredible. I had many problems with big farmers and no problems with small farmers. We have been working, and answering the last question, we have been working with banks for the last 14 years. Gaia has 14 years. But in the beginning, we weren't impact company, sorry. In the last years, we transformed our company in 100% impact investment. So we have a very good relationship, it's not a very good relationship with the banks, it's impossible in Brazil. We have a relationship with the banks in Brazil. And then, but it's very tough to convince those guys. So what we try to do to convince those guys is to, when it's possible, is to embarrass them. Because the banks in Brazil, they are they are very good at ESG washing. Yeah, it's the new greenwashing. They are incredible on it. You can't imagine. So we try to embarrass them to show you, please, guy, are you saying that you invest, that you're going to change the world, but you are investing in deforestation and you do not invest in agroforest? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Let's see. So we try to...
What you say, Joao, is also now mentioned by Alan Bolden. And I would like to, for Alan Bolden, to ask your question, Alan.
In a way, I think it's already been asked and answered, but I was just really struck by Wayne's comment about pattern recognition. And just imagining it relates very closely to what Marcello said about risk and return and determining who's risky and who is a good investment. I mean, it'd be great to hear Wayne say more about that.
Maybe Wayne and Joao can briefly comment on that, because I also thought your ESG remark had a little bit to do with that same topic. What is real? What is right? Who is the right investor? What is the right investment?
Yeah, I'll be brief. Alan, thank you for the question. Clearly, I have a positive bias because I know what I'm doing and where I am. And I know when risk levels go up and risk levels go down and how to manage that. And I've got an amazing team that does that, and we have protocols. I guess with the traditional banking models, we've seen this level of systemic overexposure in many ways, as organizations have become bigger and bigger and bigger, and then the phrase too big to fail has come. And so there's almost a zombie economy of sclerotic banks that are hiding a ton of really toxic debt. And banks don't lend anymore to small businesses. And their first duty is to steward the depositors' savings, and that's right and proper. But that they don't have the local footprint, they don't have the relationships, you don't have the physical branch network anymore, because technology has been used to simply, take away the OpEx that actually allowed decentralized decision making. And banks do something different. And I'm not going to start ripping them to shreds, because it's too long and too big a conversation. And to be honest, I don't know. I think there's plenty of people doing legitimate analysis and criticism. What I'd like to do is play the part where we can be part of the change. And we can help those pools of capital go somewhere where they're needed to democratize wealth creation. But this is new. But at the same time, it's not new, because we're doing what banks used to do back in the day. But we are doing it unsecured. We don't need deposits. So I hope that's in some way helpful. I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, João Paulo. I think you two are great examples and are proving real proof that finance can be a real change, and they change the world towards where we want to be. So thank you so much for being with us. And as Marcello mentioned, everything that we are discussing here are really connected to the summit that we are going to have in Amsterdam. And now I would like to bring Marcello and Brendan Keon. Brendan is one of the curators of the Sustainable Finance track. And I would like to ask them to explain about the process of the curation and take advantage that you are all here to bring your desires and wishes for deepen this discussion during the summit.
Yeah, Marcello, maybe I can start with you, because Marcello, you are the main curator, an important title of the upcoming summit. So maybe you can briefly explain how that curation process is being built.
So I am the curator together with Eric. Eric Ezekieli, I hope Eric is with us. He and I are, in a way, curating the whole, but in each of the track, we have 6 tracks. You can see them on our website, be4goodleaders.org. Each track has a curation team. And in the case of finance, it is Brendan Keon, I think with Vivina Berla and a few other people in the team. What I really say, and then I give it to Brendan, I give it over to Brendan, is at the summit in Rome, we had 120 people attending the finance track. There was a wonderful energy, very competent investors, bankers, financiers working together. Several ideas were put forward. We followed up with the ideas together with our colleague Arnaud Gilling from Impact, another B Corp in Luxembourg. And we've created a sort of agenda that is going to inform the next finance track in the summit in Amsterdam. In the meantime, we have asked Brendan Keon to work with us in Be for Good Leaders to develop a real strategy of what we would like to achieve in Amsterdam with the finance track. So let me say a couple of things. One is we are building a community of, we say 30,000 leaders, that may be more, but because we have in our space over 30,000 enterprises that are either B Corps or would be B Corps or aspiring companies that would like to be like B Corps. And clearly, you understand the power of 30,000 such enterprises in one community. And money and finance are can be driving for good this kind of economy. So the things that are on our agenda are, first, can we create the coalition of funds that are all working in this space? I Googled around, and there are 490 funds using the B Corp impact assessment to actually invest in companies. So that's already a huge number. So even getting 20 or 30 of these funds come together in a coalition, and we already have experience of coalition building. Secondly, one of the ideas from Rome is, can we create a sort of platform that could become initially an informal platform where people can invest in each other's companies? So that's also on the agenda. And thirdly, our friend Johannes Ortner from Austria already raised 25 million to create an impact bank in Austria. And with Johannes, we're talking about, can we actually use this sort of the whole infrastructure for an impact bank in Austria, but make it global? So that's another possibility. So we have at least 3 concrete things we want to work on in Amsterdam at the summit. The team with Brendan and Vivina and others are doing a fantastic job. So I let Brendan share where we are. Thanks, Brendan.
Yeah, Brendan, and before you start, I have to let you know the timing. We have 2 minutes for you.
It's such a wonderful challenge, and I consider it a privilege to try to summarize and convey a message of this breadth within 120 seconds, Lane. So thank you. I'm going to do it simply by saying the focus of the summit curation for sustainable finance is action. Last year, we scoped out a lot of things. And I think it's in its simplest or in its essence is deep diving a lot of the topics that we discussed today within this call. And what I wanted to do just as a circle, and then I'll be well within the frame of reference, Lane, is in the last part of the talk today, we talked about the power of financial inclusion. And that brought us all the way back to the start where Emmanuel started with the idea that the collective is critical. And the minute we talk about the collective, we're straight away on to what Mary Lou was talking about. And that's that value and values connects us to everything. And when you talk about values-based financing, it's about us, it's about humans, it's about life. So what we're going to do at the summit is basically deep dive the questions, a lot of the questions we talked about today in a briefing format, as well as an interactive format with the objective of getting to action. And if I just recap some of them, Lane's still within the time frame. the initial question was, can finance, or the big question, really make a difference? For me, it's a clear answer today, yes. The more critical question is what Herman talked about. How can we really scale existing solutions? That's a really big one. We talked about, when Mary Lou asked the question, what do we truly value? And if we know that, how do we actually invest in it? I mean, everybody should take that one away for this weekend as well. We had the one from, if we need to invest in systems change, if that's really a core component of what we're doing, but we're living in a world where we have the tragedy of horizons, as Emmanuel talked about in the beginning, where even the near term seems too long. How do we even contemplate changing the way we're doing things? And that goes to the heart of one of the last questions was, is activism possible in finance? And how do we create more activism in finance on a day-to-day basis? And I think Wayne and João Paulo, great examples. And I think we have lots more to share around that. So the program is basically designed around deep diving those types of questions, interactive format, briefing format over 5 sessions. Look forward to seeing as many of you there and discussing more on these topics. Thanks for the word.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan, for being so quick. And I know you and Marcello could talk about this for many more minutes, but we don't have more minutes, so we're at the end of this Leaders Dialogue. So thank you, Brendan, for being here. And to all of you, if you have questions, suggestions about this session during the summit, connect with Marcello or Brendan, and they will use that material. Before we end, we have a brief video that we want to show you about Amsterdam.
Building a new economy needs entrepreneurs. They are the change makers of a regenerative economy. We call them B for Good leaders, action-driven, energetic, working together. Over 1,000 leaders from all over the world will be in Amsterdam on May 11th and 12th. They will work on critical issues like food, leadership, activism, B Corp, system change, and many others. Last year, we met in Rome and created a declaration. This year, we go for the action. When real leaders come together, real change happens. Together, we have the power to collectively shift markets, paradigms, and behaviors towards a more honest, more equal, healthier, and inclusive world. We leave nobody behind. Join us in Amsterdam at our annual summit.
Having said that, before I pass the final words to my colleague Francine, I would like to mention something that we and our team are extremely proud of, and that is what we call the World Leaders Program. The World Leaders Program is set up to bring everybody, all the entrepreneurs from all over the world that normally would not be invited, would not be able to pay it, to bring them to our summit as well. And so far, we have around 150 leaders from let's say, Africa, Latin America, and Asia Pacific in this program that are going to join us in Amsterdam, and that will make it a very exciting moment. Francine.
Yeah, and if you know a leader that has this profile and would profit from the summit, please connect him or her with us. And this is how we finish our 4th dialogue series. I would like to thank you, our roundtable guests, Marilu, Emmanuel, Wayne, João Paulo, Marcello, Brendan, Lynn, to be with us. And of course, all of you that have spent this afternoon, at least almost 1 hour and a half with us. And I could not end without thanking the staff of IT Global that is here supporting us, especially Frank van de Ven, the owner of and CEO of IT Global. Thanks for hosting us on the studio. And last but not least, thank you all. And I hope to see you all in Amsterdam very soon. Be inspired.